As we all know now, with the Golden State Warriors, Steph Curry is a two-time MVP. Three-time NBA champion, and guaranteed first ballot Hall of Famer as soon as he decides to retire. However, in an alternate universe, aka if Steph, his dad, and his agent had gotten their wish, the dynasty that is the current Golden State Warriors would never have happened, and instead, Knicks fans everywhere would be the ones watching as Steph Curry not only transformed their team, but also changed the NBA forever. So what's up, guys? Mike here. Hope you're having an awesome day, and if you're not, well, I hope it's about to get better, because in this video we are going to be doing two things. The first is we're going to take a deep dive into why Steph Curry fell to the number 7 pick in the 2009 draft, and the second thing is I'm going to tell you the story of why Steph Curry did not want the Warriors to draft him. Trust me, guys, this video has a bunch of crazy things. I'm not exactly sure what to call them, but I do know that they are very interesting. Let's just jump into this and start with, throughout the course of college basketball history, we have seen plenty of superstars completely fail in the NBA. These names have become cautionary tales, as scouts everywhere have become afraid of drafting a big name college phenom who, for whatever reason, simply cannot translate their game over to the NBA. A perfect example of this is, of course, Jimmer Fredette, as in the 2011 college basketball season, Jimmer became a worldwide sensation when he was named a National Player of the Year after averaging almost 29 points per game, and was eventually taken with the 10th pick of the 2011 draft. From there, he would fail miserably in the NBA, and he is not the only one. I brought up Jimmer because he is a recent example, but this sort of thing has happened time and time again. Adam Morrison, Tyler Hansbrough, Danny Ferry, the list goes on and on. These guys all found great success in college, but once they got to the league, they struggled heavily. And because of these failures, in 2009, scouts would let a future two-time MVP slip to the 7th pick of the draft. Looking back at that draft, it is absolutely insane to think that Steph went number 7. I mean, Hasheem Thabeet went number 2. Again, the Memphis Grizzlies messed up big time here, but as you're about to see, that draft decision might not fully have been their fault. Before we get into that story though, first I want to talk about why some scouts were worried about Steph, and then we'll look at the specific teams such as Memphis that passed on Steph to find out what in the world they were thinking. Which means, let's take a step back in time here to the 2009 college basketball season. We are now in a time where Steph Curry is all anyone can talk about, because playing for the Davidson Wildcats, Steph would shock everyone by becoming a first-team All-American on the way to leading the entire nation in scoring. However, even though Steph was completely dominant, even though he was already making shots that seemed unbelievable, so many scouts at the time had serious doubts about whether or not Steph's game could translate to the NBA. The thing is though, these scouts were making a massive mistake, obviously, because when looking back, it's very apparent that all these scouts could talk about was why Steph Curry could potentially fail in the NBA. And the reasons they gave were pretty typical. For one thing, many people were not convinced that Steph could play the point guard position, as he only started playing point guard in his junior year at Davidson. Before that, he was technically a shooting guard, but he always had the ball in his hand, so even at the time, I didn't think that mattered at all. Moving forward here, the same scouts also questioned whether Steph had the athleticism needed to succeed against the game's best players. In college, Steph did play for a small conference team and thus put up huge numbers against some subpar competition. This also led to a lot of scouts questioning Steph's shot selection. They feared that Steph would be able to get away with taking these kind of shots against small college competition, but they feared that once Steph was playing against NBA defenders, the same shots he made time and time again in college would now be heavily contested and go in at a much lower rate. The problem with this analysis, of course, was that while these scouts were quick to point out potential flaws in Steph Curry's game, they in in turn failed to realize that they had a literal game-changing talent on their hands. Because of this, almost all of the teams drafting high in the 2009 draft saw Steph as a big-time risk, and honestly, that alone could be an acceptable answer to the question, why did Steph Curry slip all the way to the 7th pick? Headed into the draft, however, several teams were very interested in Steph. The thing is though, these teams were still skeptical because of all the reasons we just talked about. So many organizations also wanted to bring Steph in for a pre-draft workout in order to get a look at him themselves. This is where Steph's agent, Jeff Austin, comes in, because knowing that Blake Griffin was a lock to go number 1 and that the rest of the lottery was still up in the air, Austin jumped at the opportunity to make sure Curry was not taken by any team he felt was undesirable. This meant that from the beginning, the New York Knicks became the ultimate goal. And so when the team with the 2nd pick, the Memphis Grizzlies, asked Steph to come in and work out for them because their general manager was pushing their owner to draft Steph, Curry's agent simply declined because he did not want Steph playing in Memphis, remembering that the Grizzlies GM, quote, needed him for a workout to convince the owner. Without a workout, the Grizzlies GM would say, I can't get him, but if he comes in and works out, I want to push for him for our number 2 pick. Then in Jeff Austin's own words, he would say, we chose not to have him go to Memphis. Because of this, the Grizzlies would end up taking one of the biggest busts we have ever seen in Hasheem Thabeet, and now is when things get interesting. Because after the Thunder took James Harden and the Kings took Tyreke Evans, the Minnesota Timberwolves were now up with both the number 5 and number 6 picks. And due to the fact that the Timberwolves, 1, had 2 picks, which meant they were able to take a risk, and 2, were looking to take a point guard and actually would end up selecting 3 point guards in the first round, it seemed like a no-brainer that Minnesota would roll the dice and take Steph Curry with either pick number 5 or pick number 6. Especially because playing in a small market, the Timberwolves don't exactly have a lot of chances to get star caliber players. However, again, the work of Jeff Austin came into play here, because according to then Timberwolves general manager David Kahn, Austin would approach Kahn and tell him that no offense was meant, but in no way did Steph's dad Dell want Steph to end up in Minnesota. Austin would even go as far as to say to Kahn, quote, I really need your help with this, and implied that if Curry was taken by the Timberwolves, then there would be immediate problems raised by the family. This was a massive part of Kahn's decision making for Minnesota that year, as he remembers thinking, the back channel message would have weighed heavily in my decision making process under any circumstances, but especially in Minnesota. Immediately after my hire, I was spending nearly every weekend morning in the team's conference room, listening to team business partners and season ticket holders lament, you'll never attract free agents here. Players don't want to play in cold weather places. In Kahn's words, it was doomsday all around. And so, after the team decided they were already locked in to take Ricky Rubio with the 5th pick, a player who many also saw as a risk due to the fact that he was playing in the Euro League at the time, Kahn decided he simply could not take another risk in drafting Steph. And going even further here, we have what is possibly the most absurd reason I have ever heard for passing on a future All-Star. Because according to Steph Curry himself, quote, my guy David Kahn, I don't know where he's at right now, I don't know if that ever came out, there's a story. Everyone knows how much I love golf and played in my spare time or whatnot. I think the word on the street was that he didn't draft me because Minnesota is cold and I wouldn't be able to play as much golf, so I'd be miserable. Steph would say this on a podcast with Bill Simmons, and Bill would reply, is that true? To which Steph said, I hope it's true because that's hilarious. Guys, if this is true, are you kidding me? Imagine not taking a future 2-time MVP because you thought he'd be depressed because he couldn't golf during the basketball season. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. With this said though, to be fair, both Steph's dad and his agent desperately wanted him to play in New York. So maybe this is made up, but finishing off this video, now of course is the time to talk about the fact that Steph himself did not want to play for the Warriors. Obviously saying this now seems kind of crazy, but when we look back to the 2009 draft, I actually think it makes perfect sense. For one thing, yes, everyone involved with Steph wanted him to be on the Knicks because it was a huge market, but looking further into this, from 1995 to 2009, the Golden State Warriors made just one playoff appearance. That is the kind of franchise they were at this point. They were basically the Sacramento Kings before the season when the Kings started to show some promise. And going even further here, at the time, the Warriors had Monte Ellis on their team. Just like Steph, Monte was a short, shoot-first guard, so it makes perfect sense to think that the two of them would not work well together. And at the time, Steph's agent agreed with this. In fact, again, he would try to persuade another team to not draft Steph so he could end up in New York, as Austin remembers telling Golden State Warriors scout Larry Riley, quote, "Larry, I like you a lot and respect you a lot, but don't take Steph. This is not the right place for him." As for Larry Riley, he would say, quote, "Dell was the same way. He was almost cold." This meant that again, Steph Curry officially declined a pre-draft workout for the Golden State Warriors, but luckily for everyone involved, Golden State still knew what they had in Steph, and so they drafted him with the number 7 pick. And in what seems like a very fitting way to wrap up this story, when Monte Ellis was asked, "Can you see yourself playing with Curry in the backcourt?" Remember, this was after the Warriors had taken Steph. Monte replied, "I can't answer that. Us together? No." He then was asked why not, to which he said, "Can't. We just can't." The reporter would continue on with, "You wouldn't want to give it a shot?" And Monte would say, "I just want to win." That's not going to win that way. Not exactly the best words for a rookie to hear from his new teammate, but Monte did have a point. There is no way a Monte Ellis and Steph Curry backcourt would work. In fact, Monte himself has agreed with this, as after the Warriors won their first championship, Monte was quoted as saying, "I think everything happens for a reason. I think if I was there, we probably wouldn't have won a championship." So yeah, there you have it, guys. There are the reasons why several teams passed on Steph Curry in the draft, and why Steph, his dad, and his agent did not want to play for the Warriors. Looking back at this story, it is crazy to think what could have been, but I mean, it seems like nothing good can happen to the Knicks, so all of this makes a lot of sense to me, actually. With that said, thank you for watching this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. I make videos like this. I look at NBA conspiracies. I look at NBA what ifs. Basically, what I'm saying is if you love basketball, you will love this channel, so subscribe so you don't miss a video. And if you're already subscribed, thank you so much for supporting. You're awesome, we all know it, and as always, have an awesome day, and cue that music. By the way, if you're still here while the music is cued, here are 2 videos I think you are going to love watching. All you have to do is just click on either one of them on the screen right here, and other than that, guys, again, have a great day and peace.